is because I think this is going to be our most divisive review yet.
I swear
I
to God, don't
enjoyed
do
watching
this.
this movie. I
Look, man, they're not even trying anymore. I just don't know what to do about Disney.
were they ever?
I think at the time they were, because Cinderella was good and Jungle Book was good. I give those movies credit; those were actually pretty good. But also, Cinderella was very, very different when it came to adapting. Like they changed everything from that original source material. Like it followed the same
They
story beat,
changed a lot.
but but what I mean changes, they didn't like change the story. They just added a lot to the story, so there wasn't really
Well,
anything to mess up.
I think the live action Beauty and the Beast is to me the only exceptional like live action. I feel like Beauty and the Beast, I actually really enjoyed that live action adaptation. It's probably the only one I even remember, to be honest. I mean, Evermore, which is an exclusive song made just for that movie, is still one of my favorite songs of all time. Like, I
Yeah.
love Evermore.
No, I don't. I don't have a real problem with Beauty and the Beast. I like it. I just would like because of how attached I am to that material and how much I love that original classic film. I can't, in good conscience, sit there and go, "This film is perfect compared to this." And I think
I
with
mean, I'm
Beauty,
not saying it's better than. I'm just saying it is for a live action remake. It is really good.
I so
It,
here's what I think about that. I think everything that movie is actually really good. Funny enough, except Belle and Beast. I think they're heavily auto-tuned, and I think that specifically with Emma Watson as Belle, they make some strange choices in how she sings and how she performs, and it just doesn't work for me as well as it should. There are good things
I
about it,
mean,
but
I don't need. Emma Watson definitely had some adjustments to her vocals, or it was a completely different singer. I can't remember. I don't
sure.
feel that way for Beast at all. And I feel like Evermore is the perfect example of he sounds fun. Like I don't hear any auto tune. Like he just sounds like a great singer.
It's
Emma
also, yeah.
Watson isn't known for her singing, and I do think that it's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember not loving her vocals as much as I loved Beast's vocals.
Well, and also again with the musical being here, we have a bunch of songs from that musical you could have taken because it's technically Disney's property, and you could have put in there instead of Evermore. Like I'm not saying Evermore's a bad song, but I heavily prefer If I Can't Love Her to Evermore. I think the song as a whole is a lot more beautiful, and the orchestration is a lot more beautiful than Evermore. I do like Evermore though. I just think that there's a lot of missed opportunities with that movie, but it certainly wasn't bad. It didn't derail anything. I love Luke
Yeah.
Evans, Josh Gad as Gaston and LeFou. I think that was perfect casting. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah,
Um,
it's no live action Lilo and Stitch, which is the
yeah,
reason why we're talking
all,
about live action remakes, because
all
you've
that to
seen it,
say,
I have not.
what a hot circle of garbage I wasted my time in watching this weekend. Twice, technically, but we'll get to that later. Oh my God. Okay, where do I even begin with this? I like
I don't even want a
look.
review of it because I've heard mainly Danny Mata, who's the #1 Lilo and Stitch hater right now on TikTok and in the Otaku's Anonymous podcast. But I don't even want to hear your review because I don't want to I don't know. It's
You already know
why.
what I'm gonna say. You already
I
know what
already
I'm
know
gonna
what you're gonna say. Like just tell me, why did you watch it twice? That's all I want to know.
because there's not really any real reason.
And you were bitching about watching the Karate Kid movie once in theaters. And you didn't spend money on seeing any of these movies, granted, because you have the pass and whatever. But
Sure. Yeah.
you were complaining about wasting your time with Karate Kid, and yet I don't want to hear when we get to the Karate Kid review. You better shut your trap because I don't want to hear shit from someone complaining about Karate Kid who watched the live action Lilo and Stitch movie twice. I'm
Okay.
not even gonna
Let
watch
me
it once.
let me say why. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I watched it the first time and I went, "Was that really as bad as I thought it was?" And then I watched it again, and it solidified how bad it actually was. You know, I didn't fully know. Like, there's some films I have to watch twice because I genuinely don't know if I liked it or if it was bad. There are some films that were like that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was also one of those films back in 2019. I watched that in theaters. I didn't know if I liked it or not because of how artsy and creative it was. Now it's one of my favorite films ever. It might be, no, not might be. It is in my top 10 of all time. So it's just like there are some films you have to watch multiple times for you to actually get the best perspective. Thunderbolts was another one. We both watched Thunderbolts. I told you I saw that twice. I saw it the morning after the night. I saw
I
it,
mean, I
and
did the same thing.
I literally saw it at like 12 o'clock at night. I got up the next morning at like 9 and watched it at like 9:30 again, just because I wanted to make sure what I was feeling was true.
Mhm.
And you know, with these live action Disney films specifically, I look, man, Stars has had a downfall. Marvel has had a downfall. My God, the Disney live action films have tanked harder. I mean,
I don't
it's
even think
so
it's a tank.
unbelievably
Like, you have two good ones or like one good one and another like passable one, and that's like really it. Unless I'm like just completely blanking on it.
well.
Like,
What's worse is that I think they have a lot of forgettable movies, and it's Disney. Disney should never,
yeah.
especially with the target audience they're going for, should never have a forgettable movie. It should have something
Well, because
about
like I totally forgot that they made a live action Aladdin movie until we were having this conversation, and I was thinking back on like which live actions have I seen. I saw the live action Aladdin in theaters because Aladdin is my middle sister's like favorite Disney princess or like Disney movie, Disney princess
it.
movie. And so we saw that movie in theaters, the live action. And like I think that one is okay. I think obviously you'll never replace Robin Williams as Gene. That's just impossible.
Sure.
Will Smith, I don't think was the move personally. I think there were some character and song choices that I wasn't a huge fan of, but I don't think it was a bad movie.
I think that, funny enough, the best part of that movie was the part I thought I was going to like the least, which was Will Smith. Uh, so, I
I
don't know.
wouldn't call him the best part. I would call him the like most surprisingly not god awful part for me.
Yeah. And then there's Jafar, who is literally the worst and most unintimidating villain ever. Like,
Yeah.
here's the thing. Jafar in the original movie, I mean, he came down to one thing. He's evil, but he was clever and he was witty, and you could tell that he was very, very smart. This Jafar, I go, man, you're just evil.
Yeah, he's just one of those cartoonishly like, oh, I'm evil. I want to take over. I want the girl. I want
The
the
most
money. It's
must,
like,
yeah, the most mustache twirling villain
mm-hmm,
ever. And then
yeah.
later that summer, we got what is my opinion is the worst of the. No, that's not true. Actually, I forgot about Pinocchio. Is one of the worst Disney live action remakes with Lion King. It is a shot for shot remake, and they butcher everything. Like, it is laughably bad at times. Be
See,
prepared, non-existent, just completely gone. The whole villain song, done and gone, not even there. And what's different
that's
when you're
what
doing live action, which is just another form of animation for this studio. You know, when they created an animated cartoon classic, you can show emotion within the animals. If you're doing live action, you can't show emotion within an actual lion. It just doesn't work, and it shows here.
see, my biggest problem with the live action Lion King movie is that it's not a live action movie. Like, obviously, you're not going to get lions to act. Like, that's not possible. You just,
Sure.
like, the circus is the closest you're going to get, and that's still not even close to what you're looking for.
Right.
But, like, stop fooling yourself and calling it live act. Like, that's the case with, like, I'm very, very curious to see the live action How to Train Your Dragon movie because that one is
Yeah.
honestly kind of a mix to me between the live action Lion King, which has zero human beings, and the live action, like, I don't know, Cinderella, like one of the other live actions that's like mostly people.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
half of the supporting cast in this movie is dragons. The dragons are a huge part and a big
Yeah,
character in the original animated How to Train Your Dragon movies. Is
sure.
that going to carry over to the animated? Because there's a lot of people in this movie that are also carrying the heart, but that same heart is with the relationship between the dragons and the people. And you can get away with a lot in animation, a lot more than you can in live action with,
Yeah,
again, expressing emotion through fake beings. You can't really do that in a more live, like, I realistic is the term that they should have used because it's not live action, but it is a like realistic, I guess, adaptation.
yeah,
And I think that the live action How to Train Your Dragon, I am my expectations are like non-existent just because I want to not go in too high or too low.
yeah,
But I'm from what I've seen in the trailers, it's probably going to be pretty good. Yes, it's going to be a shot for shot remake. Yes, we can ask the question of why do we need it. But I do still think that if they can at least capture the magic of the How to Train Your Dragon movies, whether you're asking the question, why do we need this or not, it can still
sure.
be a good movie. As
Yeah,
someone who loves How to Train Your Dragon movies, I think
well,
we've
and
talked about
well, that's what I was gonna say. Is like how to, like, yes, all of these movies when they were animated originals, they were a part of our childhood. We watched them growing up, but How to Train Your Dragon was different because it came out when we were children. I remember watching that movie in theaters. I have a memory the first time I watched it, there was a storm outside and it completely like power shut down in the theater. We drove all the way out there, then we drove home. I was really sad because I wanted to watch a movie about dragons, and the second time I remember watching it and being floored by everything that was being presented for me, in my prepubescent mind, and as far as animation goes. But even then, like that movie is really good.
yeah.
And so I think
See,
that's what's just so special about this happening now. It was like me with Last of Us when they again, favorite
mhm,
game of all time, when they announced that show. I was skeptical. I didn't want it to happen, and the first season came out, and I really enjoyed the show and I was excited for season two. And it's just one of those things that, How to Train Your Dragon is also in the same camp, except, it's from a younger version of me. I want it to succeed. However, that being said, I'm very skeptical about it. So,
yeah. Well, it's funny. I have a story about when I went to go see the live action How to Train Your Dragon movie in theaters as well. Like you said, like this is a movie that we were both old enough to see in theaters as opposed to like Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, which came out way before we were born. Like it came out with
yeah,
our like grandparents on like some of those movies.
yeah,
But I'm gonna save that story for when we talk about the live action How to Train Your Dragon movie because I feel like it's more timely. But yeah, I'm excited. But again, just to wrap up this conversation, like in general, obviously the purpose of the live action movies is just so that they can hold. I think it's like holding the copyright because you have to use the product in its intended form every so often in order to hold your copyright or trademark or whatever it is. But
yeah,
like, first of all, I think that's it controversial take. I think that's a stupid law for something like this because it forces you to do this, which no one is asking for. Here's the
right,
thing. Disney is using these properties. God, they have a fucking theme park. They have merch that they sell every single year. Like, I know I'm defending $1 billion corporation right now that I'm not even a big fan of. Um,
sure,
but it isn't it isn't entirely Disney's fault, to my understanding, on why a lot of these live action remakes are happening, if it truly
sure,
is because of that law. Because look, I get it. You don't want someone to just get a copyright, hold on to it forever and whatever,
yeah,
like just milk it. But at the same time, you're forcing them at basically at gunpoint and at threat of losing something that they created
yeah,
and then forcing them to make shit out of it. Like, you can make the argument of like, oh, well, they don't have to make them bad. It's like, but how can you make it good? Like, I can't. Some of these movies you can't make a good
sure,
live action out of. Like Lion King's again a great example. Like, but I don't want another sequel out of it because I want that story to be wrapped up. So therefore, if you don't want to make another sequel, like I can say, I appreciate that they're not milking sequels out of them and they're just doing a retelling of it, as opposed to just, oh, let's make a Aladdin 15 because we need to hold the trademark.
I
Like,
mean, we got close with the Mufasa movie. We got really dangerously close with that. But
true.
I look, and I'm a bit more optimistic with Disney right now because after Snow White happened, they pretty much all came out and were like, "Hey, that Tangled one we were creating? Yeah, we're putting a halt on that indefinitely." And more likely than not, they're just gonna cancel it. And I'm not even a big fan of Tangled. I think it's just okay. That being said, cancel it. We don't need the movie. Get rid of it. And so they might be finally learning their lesson. But if
Yeah,
they're not, this is me telling them now, stop. Just look at what you're doing and see that it's wrong.
fair
Oh
enough.
my God. Anyway, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, come one, come all, come experience the Nerdy Nimrods podcast. I was so happy. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do something different for the intro. Let's do that. Welcome to the Nerdy Nimrods podcast, the only podcast in the world where your two favorite Nimrods talk all things nerdy. I am your host this evening, Carson, aka Juggernaut, with,
Brandon, aka Parrotfish.
and today we are talking about Karate Kid Legends. Okay, let's just move on. Brandon, how are we?
I'm good. Obviously this past weekend was Memorial Day weekend, and we were talking
Yes.
about this off camera, and I mentioned it on last week's episode, but my family was in town and they didn't leave until Tuesday, and we recorded that episode, what was it, late Saturday night? So
Yeah.
it was a very, very exhausting weekend. And like honestly, I felt like I have wasted this week. Like, granted, it was a shorter week, but I fully acknowledge I like completely like typically I skipped the gym entirely this week. I was scrolling on my phone just on the sofa, like I don't feel like doing anything because I just needed to recuperate from the fact that I walked like so many miles this past
Sure.
week. I was like exhausted. So I'm
Sure.
okay. I'm hoping that I can get a better kickstart off to next week. I have game
Right.
night tonight, which I'm always excited for. But yeah. How
There you
about
go.
yourself? How are you doing?
Oh my God, it's been a long week. Yeah, I'm just tired. I woke up like 5 different times last night. I couldn't sleep. Although, I had to be here in the morning, so here I am, getting ready to talk
Ooh,
all things nerdy. Um, but no, I mean, look, I'm fine. It's just a long week. We all have those types of weeks, and you just got to get through it. Keep on trucking. But I'm excited for today. Let's not waste any time. Let's just jump straight into the first topic with the season finale of Last of Us season 2.
and that's where I'm gonna jump in and give our spoiler warning. Everything that we talk about, which this week it's actually our least amount of content. I guess technically compared to last week, it was about the same with only 2 things to talk about, just because
Yeah.
we're still getting in, we're still adjusting, we're still talking, figuring out how much we want to do. Also, we're kind of in a run right now. Like once Ironheart releases and the new Phineas and Ferb releases, that's when we'll have a little bit more to talk about. But right now, it's literally just Last of Us and movies.
Yeah.
But anyway, we are talking about The Last of Us and Karate Kid Legends. There will be timestamps in the description if you're watching on YouTube, so you can skip around if you haven't seen one of those and you don't want spoilers. But everything, there will be no like spoiler-free section of these conversations. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the Last of Us season 2 finale or Karate Kid Legends, skip around or go watch it, come back and listen to this episode. But with that being said, Carson, this is the first episode that I have not taken any notes on. I took 0 notes on this episode. Part of that is because I was watching this. One of the things, I took advantage of the Memorial Day sale. I bought a new OLED TV. I have a 4K OLED TV now. I don't even know if I told you this.
You told me you were
Um,
setting a TV up last week, but I
yeah,
completely
that's
forgot
right.
about
That's right. Yeah. I got a 4K OLED 48-inch LG TV. It's sitting right behind the camera screen. And I watched The Last of Us on this because typically I've been watching it on my computer monitor, actually the one I'm recording on right now. So I was just so entranced by how I didn't think this like show like looked bad by any means, but for some reason watching it in 4K OLED, I was just like, I don't want to take notes. I just want to enjoy how beautiful this looks.
It's a
So yeah,
gorgeous episode.
yeah. I took no notes, but I this is I feel like been one of the most divisive episodes from what
Yeah,
I've seen on the online conversations. And we haven't talked about this at all except for one thing, which I'll save for a little later cuz I just want to get my thoughts out.
sure.
This episode has had to grow on me. I watched this episode, granted it hasn't been that long. I watched it yesterday before I went to go see Karate Kid, but I admittedly, especially the first, I feel like 10 minutes of this episode was not, I wasn't feeling it. Something felt off to me. I wasn't loving, I was honestly thinking for the first 10 minutes of this like episode, like, oh, this might be the weakest, like this is the weakest episode of the season so far. And now I
Sure.
think that they picked it up towards the end. I do think that like certain story beats that happen and just certain events that happen did pick it up for me. But overall, it was obviously very much weaker than the season 1 finale, and I know the viewership was like half of this finale than it was of the season 1 finale. And I think that'll pick up because it was Memorial Day and people aren't watching on the day. Like I didn't watch it on the day.
Sure.
But I don't
Sure.
know. I did not hate this episode. I just did not love this episode. And I'll get into why after you give your thoughts on the episode because I don't want to like get too into it right now. But
Sure.
I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if I'm just completely wrong or if you loved this episode and thought it was one of the best of the season or what your thinking is.
I thought I said this in my review, but as a finale for the season they set up, it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and then as a cliffhanger, it also offered, probably what, they should have done. However, this finale is just another example of a rushed story. This season was only
Yeah.
7 episodes, and I don't know why. The first season was 9 episodes, and I get that, you might in your head go, "Oh, it's only 2 episodes; it can't be that bad." The issue is
That's
we
2 hours
already
of content.
we already know, and we talked about it last week, that next season is following Abby specifically and her perspective of everything and how everything goes down. That being said, you mean to tell me we're going to have 7 sole episodes of Abby during Seattle when we only had what is technically 3 episodes of Ellie in Seattle?
I've heard that it's going to be longer. I've heard that next season is going to be. I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed that next season's going to be longer. Now, is that 8 episodes? Is that 9 episodes? That hasn't been confirmed yet because I don't even know if they've shot the next season yet. I don't think they
They
have. I
haven't
don't
even
even
wrote
think
it.
it
They
started.
haven't even wrote it.
But I mean, to be fair, it's already kind of written. They just have to make the adjustments. But anyways, it's supposed to be longer. Now, I guess the question is, and we can talk about this later. We don't have to talk about this because I know we've beaten this horse to death. But I don't think next season's only going to cover Abby's story. I think it'll take us up to where we are now, and then I think it will continue. I think you might get 9 episodes, similar to season 1. You might have 7 Abby episodes, because from what I've heard, the Abby section is longer than the Ellie section in the video game, so you can get more out of the Abby section.
It might be slightly longer. But that's all. Again, that's also because technically this is the first third of the game. Like where they ended off the show is where in the game would have been like the 1/3 point of the way through. Then it's Abby, and then you have a whole ending with uh, Ellie
Events
and
that you won't
Abby.
spoiler.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. And so it's just like I think this finale just showed how rushed everything was. It's now especially everything that happens in Seattle. Again, we talked about
Yeah.
last week about how I think episode 6 with Joel and Ellie, I think is probably one of the best of the series, if not the best of the series.
Hmm.
Episodes 1, episodes 2, episodes 3 and episode 6, I think are all great Last of Us episodes.
Yeah.
I might have some qualms with some of them, but I think they are all great.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like a cohesive story. Again, episode 6 being a flashback episode, it's kind of hard to, you know,
Yeah.
it's cohesive. But everything in Seattle, everything with Ellie and Dina, as much as I like it, it is all very rushed. And that leads to another point, which I've actually started to like agree with other people on, is that Ellie doesn't seem fully like Ellie from the game. So again, the biggest thing about game 2 is that it tells the never ending tale of revenge, the cycle of revenge. And it really
Mm-hmm.
goes to show how far Ellie's willing to go. And you get that in this season, but it's also at the sacrifice of a lot of just love emotional scenes between Ellie and Dina, which I'm fine with. I'm not upset at that. But then make more episodes, make them longer so you can dedicate solely to this revenge. Because that is a huge part of Ellie's character in not just this season, but the entire rest of the show. That is the whole point of Ellie's character after the death of Joel. And I just feel like they are, again, going back to the word rushed, rush so much of it that you're missing a lot of nuance and a lot of character that it just becomes, kind of like not boring, but just like, why are we watching this then? What was the point of this if you were if this was actually the story you're trying to tell? If you're trying to tell the story of revenge, why are we watching solely an episode dedicated to love? And again, I
Yeah.
don't disagree with those scenes. I actually like those scenes. I was going to talk about how, as a whole, as a season, those things are everything was really good. It just was rushed, and for the story they're trying to tell, it doesn't add anything to it. And
Yeah.
so I think this finale just shows how everything was like really rushed in the end. And again, I'll go more in depth to like things I really liked about this episode, things I really didn't like, but just as a whole, because I really wanted to say that rushed as hell. And it's a shame because we came from season 1, which was for the most part very well paced. It felt very well paced.
Yeah.
Here, it doesn't feel very well paced at all. It feels very, very rushed. I'll
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
think that's one of the reasons why, and I'll start getting more specific with it now that you've given your thoughts as well. I think that's one of the reasons why things felt off, especially for those first 10 minutes. But even just the whole course of this episode, because this I'm gonna jump around a lot, more than usual, probably. This episode had my least favorite scene of all of Last of Us in it. It had the most useless, waste of time, pointless. I actively like when I was watching this scene, I actually felt like, can I just switch through this? Like, I hate this. And you might know what scene I'm talking about without even me giving it, but I'll just go ahead and say it. It was when Ellie gets washed by the wave and ends up on Seraphite Island. That was what, 5 minutes that you absolutely wasted. I've heard it's not in the video game. It was so unnecessary. She was in no danger. We know this. Like I was in no fear of anything bad happening, and I knew I knew that we were going to end up at the Ferris wheel, not because of spoilers, but just because it made logical sense. So why the hell did you waste 5 minutes or whatever, however long it was, on Seraphite Island? And I know why. I know why, because it's supposed to be setting up when Abby's story and you see what the war's going on, because I already know that we're going to get that portion from Abby's perspective, but it wasn't necessary. I didn't need that setup. We already had the setup with Isaac in talking about the war with the Seraph. We already had that setup. We did not need an additional setup scene with Abby sitting on the island being in danger and this whole kid. And it also had another scene that I didn't really like at all because it made no sense, which was Ellie like trying she was with Jesse and she was trying to like go save the Seraphite kid,
Yeah.
who also to me didn't really look like a kid, looked like the same age as Ellie did, which is 19, which I guess is kid, but still not. That scene also, I didn't like that scene. It made no sense. I
Sure.
don't think the Ellie that we've built up to this point would have done that. I don't think that made sense at all. I don't know if it's in the video game or not, but I don't think it was necessary. I don't think it was a piece of character building that made sense or was needed. The closest thing we've had is when Ellie was disgusted that the tiny children were slaughtered by the wolves of the Seraphites. But the thing
Yeah,
is, anyone would be disgusted by any of that, let alone them being children. So I don't see that as being, oh, Ellie needs to save the children. She's just disgusted that these children are laying dead in the way that they are. So it doesn't, to me, where Ellie is and how gung ho she is for revenge, that because I feel like this is the episode where she feels the most gung ho for revenge. And I'll talk about this later because there was a very specific scene that represented that for me. But those two scenes in particular, I cut them out. They were unnecessary. It fucked up the pacing. I wanted more of certain other scenes. Like, I think a scene that felt so rushed was the when Owen died scene. That scene was so, I don't know how long it takes in the video game. It was so rushed to me. I
actually,
didn't like,
it's quicker in the game, but there's a
oh,
reason why.
really?
It's actually completely laid out different than it is in the show. I actually prefer how they did it in the show compared to the game. In the game, it all starts the same way. Owen goes for the gun. She shoots Owen. He's lying there, and then she stabs Mel in the neck, and then goes back, finishes off Owen, and Owen says she's before he dies, and then Mel's already dead. All that Ellie does is turn her over, open up the jacket, and sees the baby pop. That's the reveal. A lot of people actually hate that choice in the game. I don't hate that. I actually think it adds a lot, especially when it comes to the revenge plot. I don't hate the scene. I actually also don't think it's rushed. I think it's actually that scene I think is actually done correctly. If they were going to do it, they did it correctly, and I think they did it better than how they did it in the game. It's one of the only instances in this episode I will say they did better than they did it in the game.
Maybe it's just because I don't care about Mel or Owen, and I know we'll get them in Abby's flashbacks, and it'll make
Yeah.
me care, and it'll
Oh yeah.
recontextualize this entire thing, obviously. But at the same time, like, okay, I genuinely think the reason why I did not like this and I felt like it was rushed is because, so you said that in the game, Ellie slits Mel's throat with a knife, right? Like, because there's a scuffle on the
Yes.
ground,
Stabs her
and
with.
then
I'm pretty sure. It's been a while since I've seen it, but
okay.
that's what I remember.
I think the reason why I felt like it was rushed is because the way that she died felt so kind of convenient. Because the way that she dies is Ellie makes like a gunslinger shot, essentially, or not a gunslinger shot, but like she's holding up the gun and shoots Owen through the neck, which, by the way, dope actually.
Sure.
But then the bullet like grazed her carotid artery, and she just like, okay, if you don't want to do the knife fight scene, whatever, have Ellie do a regular double. Have them both like, I don't know. Bullets don't do that, and I felt like it felt too convenient that she just shot so perfectly and they were standing so perfectly there that it grazed her. I don't have a problem with the whole like pregnancy thing or the whole cut her out. Like, I actually really liked that aspect of the, like, I'm not saying you need to drop her dead immediately like you did in the video game. I'm just saying having her die from a grazed bullet that conveniently landed in the perfect, like, you can shoot, like, I've seen a lot of movies and TV, like, bullets graze here all the time. They don't just drop dead.
Sure.
Like,
Look, this is what I want to say about this episode because I did say it's very rushed. I can't wait for 2 to 3 years down the line when we're talking about season 3 because I do personally believe that this episode is going to be improved greatly with
oh
the
yeah.
with the knowledge of whatever season 3 gives. Because
And
this episode,
unfortunately, that's going to be in like 3 years by the time we forget this episode. And that's one of
well,
the
because
unfortunate
the whole second half of this episode, for the most part, there might be a few other things. The whole second half of this episode is literally dedicated to setting up things the audience doesn't know it's set up for. Like at the end of
Yes, correct.
season 1, we have the long camera shot where it lingers on the doctor's head. We don't know why it lingers on the doctor, but to the gamer, you know it's because it's Abby's dad, and you know that that's what they're leaning towards is like, hey, in that moment, it's letting the audience in, hey, we are sticking to the source material, we're not changing it. Everything that went on in game 2 is more than likely going to happen because we're lingering on this shot. And there's a lot of shots, like when Ellie's walking around and you see like the bloody rags and whatnot. That's going to lead to something later. What Mel and Owen are arguing about is going to lead into something later too. Like when Ellie's walking around and seeing all of these things, it is literally set up for something that's going to happen later. So it's just one of those things that this episode is also going to be improved. I think honestly the whole of season 2 is going to be improved.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
But this episode specifically is really going to be improved with season 3. And I think here's the biggest question I have, and this is probably the last thing I'm talking about regarding to the season. Do you think people are going to stick around to watch season 3 after what season 2 gave us? Because again, I don't personally hate season 2. I think there's a lot about it. I just think there's also a lot to hate about it, which season 1 didn't have, and it's very disappointing. That being said, I don't necessarily think it's bad. I think it's got great cinematography. I think the acting is incredible. I think there, on a negative standpoint, is a few lines of dialogue that could have been rewritten, scripts that could have been reworked. And I think, obviously, the choices they make in the game are still here. At least they stuck to the source material, and they said, fuck you, audience. We're doing exactly what we did before. Here we go. Yeah. So it's the question of, do you think people are even going to stick around? And what happens if people don't? Do they just cancel the show? Do we even get that season 4?
We will. We will definitely get a season 3. Now, the question is, do they wrap it up in season 3 or is there a season 4? I don't know how much you think so.
4. They've already pretty much confirmed. Neil Druckmann has said that he wants to do a season 4, and Craig Mason has also said that he wants to do a season 4.
So I think that, and we haven't talked about this at all, so I'll talk about this before I give my thoughts on if people are going to come back. I think that the ending of this episode is very, very strong. And I mentioned earlier that there was a scene in this movie that like contextualizes like Ellie's quest for revenge, I think, better than anything else. And it wasn't the baby scene, which I was still sitting there like, holy, like Ellie's like a bad person. Like there's revenge, and then there's what Ellie does there. Like that's just now granted, that baby would not have survived. That baby, there was no good option. There was no good option.
Sure.
That baby was not going to survive. I understand, but it's still like a you knew you like whatever. But it is when Ellie is talking with Jesse and they're talking about, oh, why did you come? Like, if you don't support this and you vote, this is when we find out that Jesse voted against, which I can't even remember. I was not shocked by. I anticipated that he voted against. Even though he said he would. I feel like it made sense. But they're talking about, oh, why did you come? And he's like, oh, well, because I know that if it was me that was killed or me that was in danger, you would have burned the world down for me.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I very much disagree with Jesse in this scene. And the reason why is because 2 seconds before, like legitimately, I think it was the scene before or like 2 scenes before or whatever. Maybe it was a little after. Anyway, Ellie, yeah, they're having this conversation after this other event happens. And that other event is when Ellie goes off to the island and she leaves Tommy behind. She knows that Tommy is in danger. She knows that she's coping. She's coping with the fact that, oh, Tommy will be fine. Tommy can handle blah, blah, blah. No, he can't. Jesse is making phenomenal points here. And Ellie, this is Joel's brother here, mind you. This is basically her pseudo uncle, someone who has been another father figure in her life, who has taken her in.
Yeah.
And she leaves him. He is actively, we know she's making, oh, it might not, we don't know it. We know it's Tommy. We know he's in danger. We know that it would be very hard for him to hold his own. As badass as Tommy is, I don't care what you say. There is a lot of wolves into one Tommy, and he is very clearly in danger. And Ellie leaves him and says, nope, I'm going to go on this revenge quest that will gain me absolutely fucking nothing. Because if she'd never went after Abby, she already knows that they never would have come back. They got what they wanted. The town is no longer in danger, and yet she is still going after them. And I don't have a problem with that until this scene where she leaves Tommy, and then you're like, oh no, you're a bad person. Because what Jesse's saying later on doesn't hold true. He would not have come back.
Well, and
Because very clearly she doesn't in this scene.
Something that I want to point out, and this is something that I do think the show in season 2 as a whole did really good, in this episode pretty much revealed it, was you see Ellie's inner turmoil with, you know, in episode 3, she makes this whole speech. She gets up in front of the town and says, guys, I don't want revenge. I want justice. And these people could come back and they could completely harm us. They could kill more of us. They could raid us, this, that. Like you said, she knows very damn well they're not going to do that, because she knows the reason why Joel specifically was killed. It wasn't because of raid. It wasn't because of anything specifically. It wasn't to send a message. It was because of revenge for the people he killed. And Ellie tries to play it off as, I want justice, I want this. And then you see little by little as the story goes on. Again, when I say rushed, things like this needed more. We needed more of the revenge blood-filled Ellie. You get the scene with Nora, and you know, as she's like, oh my God, don't you know what he did? Why we did what we did? What he did? And I was like, no, I know what he did. I'm gonna kill you anyway because you killed, you know, this and that. And then you get the scene with Owen and Mel, and then you get this whole scene with Jesse and Ellie, when it's basically finally revealed. Even though you, as the audience, you know Ellie's doing it for revenge, she finally admits it to somebody else. Like, fuck the community. Like, screw the community. She basically outright says, I'm not doing this for the community. I'm doing this because I lost somebody that I love, and he was taken from me right in front of me.
Yeah.
So well, it's just I will say it was a very good full circle moment for Ellie, as far as I don't want to say it's an arc, but it's like a semi-arc, because obviously her arc isn't going to be completed till later on. But, you know, I guess if she had an arc, it's coming to the realization that, you know, I am doing this for revenge. At no point was I ever doing this for justice. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for revenge.
Yeah, you know? Well, because there's another scene, because before even getting to the Jesse conversation, we have a scene before that, which is the conversation with Dina and Ellie. And Ellie admits to Dina that, I know why they did it. This is why they did it. And even Dina, who 3 episodes ago, I think it was, on episode 4, she had the thing of, no, I support your revenge. If this was someone that I cared about, like, I hunted down the person who killed like, I understand this. Like, if I hadn't killed the person, like, I would have. Even Dina, in this moment, and I think it makes sense for her character, mind you, especially given that she was already having second thoughts because of her pregnancy. Even Dina is like, okay, Ellie, this is very important information that you withheld from me. Let's go home. Like Dina says, the person who was just as gung-ho as Ellie was, despite those second thoughts of pregnancy, like she was pushing past that because she wanted revenge as well. Even she is like, okay, Ellie, this is it. Like, she's very angry at Ellie. You can tell. And she's like, let's go home. Like, you held this from me. This was pertinent information. Like, I don't know if it would have changed it if Dina knew from the start, but I do know for a fact that withholding this information is why Dina really got pissed off and was like, no, let's go home, because this changes everything. Like, now you're putting us in danger and my baby in danger for no reason. Like there
Well,
was a reason originally, and now it feels like there's no reason, and I can't even trust you anymore because you've lied to me this whole time.
well, and even Dina, I think herself knew it was revenge. Like she even says, like I'm staying up on you. She knew it wasn't justice. She knew it was for
Yeah.
revenge. The difference was she originally thought it was just a senseless crime, and she did love
Mm-hmm.
Joel. And Joel also saw Dina as a daughter figure. Again, it is one of the only changes from the game this season where I go, that was a genius idea. It's a genius move. It gives Dina more reason. It
Yeah.
actually makes her inevitable turn at the end more logical, and it adds something to the story that I didn't expect. And so Dina, just deciding, look, you withheld this information. You chose not to tell me this. We're going home. Because now she knows the full story. She knows the truth. Joel was not killed senselessly. There was a
Yep.
full reason as to why he was killed, and it was because of his fault. Like it was genuinely
Yep.
like something that's unspeakably horrible. And
Yeah, and I think Dina being upset by that is I loved that scene. I felt like it made total sense because Ellie Ellie in season 1 is made to be a likable but broken character, and this season is making you, to me, and I don't know if this is the purpose, but especially in this episode culminates in turning her into a character that you can no longer support. I heard an analogy on the Otaku's Anonymous podcast where they were talking about like it's like that one friend that you have that you're like, okay, you've made one too many bad, like, okay, buddy, like you've made one too many bad decisions. Like I'm here for you. I've been here for you. I've been supporting you.
sure,
I've been trying to help you through this, but you keep making bad decisions and you keep doing things to the point in which
sure,
like
right,
maybe each individual action isn't indefensible, but all of this combined has come to the point of okay, now even you have to admit that this is just like this is not good, but you're doing it anyway, which was that
sure,
scene with Jesse and Ellie in the building, in the sense of like, okay, I'm doing this just for me. Like there's no other reason. I'm being selfish.
yeah,
And
no,
yeah, like
well, and it's a fun comparison when you think about it. Joel in the previous episode, and he doesn't give this talk to Dina, so I might just be like creating this out of my own head, but it's something nice to kind of think about. The whole last episode was basically a I don't know if it's not a metaphor, but I don't know what exactly you would call it, but it's basically Joel saying, "Look, if you ever have kids, I hope you do a little better than me." And it's about Joel's cycle of revenge and how it continues through generation to generation. And
mhm.
Joel was a father figure to Dina. Dina saw Joel as a father figure. Dina goes on this revenge quest and she breaks her cycle of violence in this episode, her cycle of
Yep.
revenge, when she tells Ellie no. I think it's a fun contrast. Again, I'm not saying Dina and Ellie were, I'm not saying Dina and Joel were closer than Ellie and Joel. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
little different. But you see the cycle break, and then you get to see the comparison between the two. This is, what happens when you break the cycle of revenge. This is what happens when you actually go deeper into it and you fall further down the rabbit hole. And so
Yeah.
it's a fun comparison to see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the last thing I'll say before I answer the question that originally started this conversation is rip the homie. I jumped out of my like literally I was sitting right here on the sofa when Jesse dropped and very clearly dropped dead. Like it's not like oh he got shot. No, he is dead. Jesse is dead.
Yeah.
I jumped out of like I literally like I was like relaxing, like laying down. I was like kind of comfortable. Jesse drops dead. I was like, what? What did
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just say? Like
yeah.
I
That's
was I was shook.
That's why 2 weeks ago I literally looked at you, or it might have been a few weeks ago. Whenever Ellie and Dina went out on their own, I was like, "Well, we got to circle back to it somehow because Tommy's got to get ahead of them. There's got to be a way for these to connect." And then that's why when episode 5 hit, and I didn't tell you this for a reason because I knew you were going to be shocked by this, but that's why I was like, "Oh, Jesse's here in episode 5. Great, that's fantastic."
It you don't even have time to process your emotions because it happens so quickly. You would
In
get
the
a
game, it
little
does.
bit of speech from Abby and then you move on. And I actually really liked that. And so the reason why I bring that up is one, because I wanted to talk about it, because holy shit, I jumped out of my chair. But also, it ties into my answer to your question. And the original question was, do you think people are going to turn up for a season 3? I think that this episode had a fantastic ending. Going back and seeing the day one of Seattle with Abby and looking over the stadium and having that cliffhanger, I thought that we were just going to cut to black and end. So, and it took like 10 seconds. Like, I thought the credits were going to start rolling after Jesse got shot and we had the gunshot. But then you cut to the Abby waking up and seeing the Seattle day one. I think that that was a fantastic hook to where we are going next season. My only problem, or I should say my main problem, is that we already talked about it. It's going to be 3 years at least, probably, until we get another season.
Maybe.
If
Maybe.
if maybe if okay, the reason why I say that is if season 3 of The Last of Us were to come out next year, like in 2026, I feel like viewership would be really good. I feel like viewership would be lower, but I feel like, especially hearing that the Abby story is miles better than the Ellie story in this game or in this like
Yeah.
arc, I think that the viewership would turn up because people would still be riding the high off of what just happened and wanting to find out. I feel like for me as a non-game enjoyer, I want to know. I want to find. I am like grasping at like whatever. I want more. I want the Abby story. I want to care
Sure.
more. Will I still care in 2-3 years? Will I still even remember in 2-3 years?
Well, and
Like,
again, I don't know whether or not they actually started writing it or not. I heard somewhere that they hadn't, but they very well could have already started writing this.
I
And
know they haven't started shooting. As far as I know they have not started shooting it,
well,
which
they were
is
never
at
going to start
least
shooting.
going. Yeah.
They were never going to start shooting until after this season was released. But I think the reason I'm saying it might be slightly quicker than this season is because of the absence of Pedro Pascal, because he's not going to be in season 3. He's not going to be in the story
Yeah.
maybe until season 4, and just like a cameo. Even like the brief, episodes he was in this season, he still, it was still enough of an impact that he would have definitely bogged down production schedules with Fantastic Four and now Avengers Doomsday, which again, it came out after this show would have already released. But with as busy
Yeah.
of a schedule that he has as an actor, it doesn't surprise me that this season took that long, and it probably was because of him and his messy schedule. Everybody
Yeah.
else in this show, I do not see having a messy schedule, especially because the start of next season is going to
Mm,
focus on Abby and her gang. So I take it back. The only
okay,
person who
that's
I could
true.
see
Because
causing problems,
Isabella Marcet would cause problems, especially with how involved she is with the new DCU playing Hawkgirl and
yeah,
how much I could see her character getting involved in the DCU, because we already know that she's in Peacemaker.
yeah,
Maybe not a big role, but she's not going to be in this next season until maybe the latter episodes again, if we do get the tail off from this event and it's not just Abby's story.
sure.
Um
And the only exception to Abby's gang that could potentially cause problems, and I always forget the actor's name. Is it Danny Ramirez? Is that who plays
Isaac's
Joaquin Torres?
character.
No. That's Jeffrey Wright. Who plays Joaquin Torres in Captain America 4? Who plays Falcon, the new Falcon?
Oh, I know who you're talking about, and I can't remember. But
I
I
think
know
it's
who you're talking about.
I think
Yeah.
it's Danny Ramirez. I think is his name.
Yeah.
He could
I think you're right.
cause
I think you're right.
he could potentially cause problems, especially now that they've delayed Avengers Doomsday and Avengers
Doomsday.
Wars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there could be a problem with that could help production, especially because he is a part of Abby's gang. But I don't honestly. It's speculation. I really couldn't say when the season will come out. But back to what you were saying, when it comes out could also affect how people view this story, how people, this and that. And, it also could be a lot of hype for season 3. Maybe in a year down the line, people will watch season 2 or they'll look back on it and go, it really wasn't as bad as, we thought it was. We were just, butthurt and sore after the big changes or the big, reveals that they made. I
Yeah.
think the biggest negative the most negativity I've heard is from newer viewers who are experiencing the story for the first time. Gamers are only complaining about the changes from the game. It's not actually about the show itself. It's the
I've heard
changes
the
made from
opposite,
the game.
actually. I've heard the exact opposite. I've heard from people that are not game. I mean, Koi being the main one, but like non-game fans are enjoying this season way more than game fans, just because. And this goes back to, again, like how controversial Last of Us 2 was as a story and a video game when it
Yeah.
released. I feel
Yeah.
like the gamers are holding this to a different standard. And now, granted, my pool isn't big. Koi's the biggest, and there's a few other people that I've listened to that have talked about this briefly, about like non-gamer fans and their enjoyment of this. But like, it's still mixed. Either way, reception is still mixed. I
Sure.
am excited for a season 3, as I've already established, but I am genuinely curious to see, however many years from now it's going to be, how many people turn up for season 3 of The Last of Us and how much people enjoy season 3 of The Last of Us. But unless you want to talk about anything else, we can go ahead and wrap
No,
this up.
I'll just wrap up my thoughts and summarize once again my thoughts in season two. It is a mess in a lot of ways, but when it's high, it is really high.
Yeah.
And
It has some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows.
and I think it is overall a mess in that regard. But I do think it's unfair to call this show bad when it offers a lot. Again,
Mhm.
when I see most of these comments, it is mostly gamers who are butthurt, and then people who are new viewers who complain about the actual story of the show because, oh, we love Pedro Pascal, we love Joel, or we really grew attached to that Jesse character. And I don't really have a dog in the fight. Again, I didn't play Game 2. I watched Game 2, and I watched it when it came
Yeah.
out. So it's very different for me. As much as I do like the story and whatnot, I don't have enough to go, oh, they changed this, and I'm really mad at that. If people change it
Mhm.
and it's actually good, I'm okay with it. And I think people are gamers specifically are always more upset about the changes in this game particularly because of how good Ellie is in the game. That is the only reason. I still think Bella Ramsey does a phenomenal job. Do I think that she's better than Ashley Johnson in the game? It's debatable. No.
They both bring their own aspects to the character.
They
Let's
they
just
both they,
say
both
that.
they both bring their own aspects to the character. I do think Ashley Johnson's better in a lot more type of a is a lot more Ellie in the sense, but again, she originated the role. But Bella Ramsey is still absolutely phenomenal here, and she has some really good scenes. Again, I
Mhm.
like the new characters they brought in. I most of the choices I'm actually okay with. It just came down. Say it with me now. It was rushed, and
Yeah.
they needed more
Yeah.
episodes,
Like,
more time to flesh out a lot more. And like again, you talked a lot about Jesse's death. I didn't really get a chance to say this. Jesse's death felt quicker and felt a lot more rushed because there's a lot more of Jesse in the game. There's a lot, and again, some of it is action pieces, but there were some dialogue moments that just are completely scrubbed from the show. And so,
mhm.
again, it's a mess. It has problems. Is it bad? Absolutely not. Is it the greatest thing since sliced bread? Absolutely not. It has its problems. I still enjoy it. I'm excited for season 3. I can't really say anything more than that.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end it and
We don't have
transition into our next
we don't
topic.
no, we don't have anything else to talk about. I think it's fine.
So our next topic of conversation, as mentioned at the top of the episode and mentioned last week, is Karate Kid Legends. We both saw it. I saw it last night. I believe, Carson, you also saw it last night, or yeah.
Last night,
Um, I have not. I refused to say anything about my thoughts on this movie to you, until we hit record.
I
And
was very
and
vocal.
yeah, Carson was very vocal. And the reason why is because I think this is going to be our most divisive review yet.
I swear
I
to God, don't
enjoyed
do
watching
this.
this movie. I
Oh my
I
God.
actually I think this movie was a enjoyable experience, I think it is extraordinarily flawed. I think that I'm going to talk a lot about what made this movie, why people are dogging on it so much. But I think that that there's a lot of potential here that I really enjoyed, and it makes me actually want another movie with these characters. Um, I think that, and I'll just give a very, very, very brief overview of why I think this movie. This is Why could this movie not hold on a single scene for more than 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Why did they have to this is one of the most poorly edited movies I've ever seen in my life. This movie is atrociously edited. The fight scenes are messy with their editing. I think the choreography is great. I think the editing in both the fight scenes and in the non-fight scenes, they have to cut between camera angles every 2 seconds, and it felt miserable. I think that they had two really interesting stories that I think one's better than the other. I think that they could have honestly given this movie more time for these storylines to breathe. I think that the movie definitely feels rushed. It's only an hour and a half. And that's including credits. So really you're talking about like an hour 20. So it's over very quickly. I don't think it overstays its welcome, but I think that the heart in this movie and the comedy for me. I laughed out loud a lot, both because some things were ridiculous, but because some things were just genuinely funny to me. And I loved the character dynamic between the two main leads. And the emotion that I got. I didn't cry during this movie, but I did feel the heart that they were going for. Don't roll your eyes at me. Don't roll your eyes.
I don't know what
I
you're talking
know
about.
you hated this movie. I know you're
My
gonna come in and shit on everything in this movie. Let me get out the fact that I think that this movie, I went into this movie. I sat down in the theater, and the second they started playing the movie, I was like, man, what did I do to me in card? Like, why did I do this? And then like throughout the course of the movie, I had a good time. I think that this movie is better than the Minecraft movie. In the Minecraft movie, I
oh yeah.
enjoyed because it was
Oh, I'm
stupid.
sorry. Yeah,
This
yeah,
movie,
yeah.
this movie, I genuinely just had a fun time with because it was a fun movie. Was there still some ridiculousness and stupidness? Yes. But I feel like I can see, and maybe this is why people have such a big problem in this movie, is because it's very obvious where they could have fixed this movie. It's not like a secret on like, oh, what's wrong with this movie? It's very obvious what's wrong with this movie, and I think it's very easy to fix, but I still feel like the elements that worked really worked for me. So I'll get that out here so that Carson can come in and just shit on everything that I just said and dog on this movie and blame me for wasting an hour and a half of his life. But
I it was actually an hour and 22 minutes. It really wasn't an hour and a half, but yes, I
well, okay,
counted.
IMDb has
Yes, I
it as an
counted.
hour and a half. IMDb has it as an hour and a half. It's the actual runtime. I don't think is an hour and a half, especially
No.
without credits. But yeah.
Um,
It was still sunlight when I left the theater. That's all I'm saying. There was still,
I
well, granted it was raining, but
I will give you this. It was funny. It had moments of genuine laughter, and it had moments where I genuinely was like, "Oh, this is pretty fun. This is good." Most notably, all the action scenes. They are very well choreographed, and they are very well shot, and they are very well done. Jackie Chan is fun. Ralph Macchio is fun. The two new leads are good enough. This is the most redundant, boring, and convoluted, stuffed plot I've ever seen for a Karate Kid movie. This film is coming off of the high and the success of Cobra Kai. I did not watch Cobra Kai.
yes.
I also will add
I
this:
also did not watch Cobra Kai.
if you are a Karate Kid fan, you will probably like this movie. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't. It's definitely not that bad. If you're a fan
Yeah.
of the series, you will definitely have a fun time with this. However, Karate Kid Legends it's almost like they had like two different scripts to two different movies, one starring Jackie Chan, one starring Ralph Macchio, and they said, "Hey, let's put these together and let's rope them together." Because they actually start off, I give the movie this. I was actually kind of hooked. I wasn't like, super into it, but I actually believed the story for the first half. And then they completely
Mhm.
changed the story
Oh, yeah. The
and
first
turn it
half
back
of
to
this
the
movie is
story.
by far the strongest part of this movie.
I actually go as far as say it's probably stronger than, a lot of the other Karate Kid movies other than the original. Because at least it tried to do something different. And then they,
Mhm.
take it back to its roots and they do something that isn't, you know, it isn't original anymore. And I just think they dropped the ball so hard, especially because they have two very good actors in this franchise here. They have Ralph Macchio. They have Jackie Chan. And this is the first thing I'm going to do. This is the first thing I'm going to say about this. Don't put them in the freaking poster. Don't put them in the trailer. Ralph Macchio is barely in this movie. I actually when I came home yesterday,
5 minutes
I
of
went
screen
through the
time.
film. I went through the film on my phone to timestamp it out because I was curious. Jackie Chan is really not in this movie. He's barely in it. He's more in it than Ralph Macchio. Ralph Macchio is only in the last half to last third of the movie. It's similar to like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire being in No Way Home, except he really is just here because of a cameo.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he isn't
It's
in the story.
a
He is,
nostalgia
but he
bait.
really is here just for the cameo, and I hate that. Don't put him in the movie if you're going to do that. Beyond, like, it's almost like he was filming Cobra Kai, and they were filming like the movie next door. They're like, "Hey, you want to come over and shoot a couple scenes? Sure, why not?" And that being said, like you could get him out of the movie and it would stay the same. You could literally say Jackie Chan's character, like they kind of do in the movie, he has a connection to Miyagi. Just say that he knows Miyagi karate and he knows his own, and he's combining both for this kid to use. You don't
Yeah.
have to give Daniel LaRusso this whole moment to shine in the movie beyond the cameo. The story, as I said, it's redundant because they constantly go back on themselves and they change stories every 20 seconds. You talked about how this movie can't hold a scene for more than 2 seconds. It literally can't hold storylines for more than 2 seconds. It goes constantly back and forth. And I'll also give the movie this: the emotional beats for me just weren't there. I didn't feel this big, you know, revelation or have this big moment where it's like, yeah, good for the hero. And so at the end of the day, like, we'll dive more into this. I'm not saying we're not going to, but I can't say I enjoyed my time when I found myself sitting there looking at my watch, going, okay, we still got more of this, and it just after a while it became very, very boring and redundant for me, despite all the cool action. And I'll even give the movie this: the writing itself isn't actually all horrible. It actually is pretty good. They do a nice job writing it. I don't know if the writers from Cobra Kai were involved in this, but they usually did a pretty good job writing stuff on that show. From the small things that I have seen, it's just I don't know. I think the movie just wasn't for me, and I really wanted to like this movie, especially because of the way they set it up. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really fun to have both these veteran actors training this kid in the ways that, like, the way they set up in the trailer was Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio were training this kid. I thought that's perfect. That's actually a really fun idea for a movie. Get them both in there, and then they're
Yep.
barely in the movie, and they mismarketed it heavily,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just a big disappointment in that regard. I don't really ever want to watch this again unless my family desperately wants to watch this in theaters. I just never am going to spend time to watch this again for that reason. Um, we can dive deeper into it now, but those are just my quick thoughts. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, I just want to completely agree with you that this is what I hate about current Hollywood and what they feel they need to do when in reality they don't. And I feel like the numbers show that and they're ignorant if they think it is, which is they feel like they need to use nostalgia or big name actors to sell a movie. You
Sure.
really don't. I don't think that is necessary at all. In fact, I feel like it's hurting a lot of movies nowadays more than it's helping. And that is a perfect example of the misrepresentation of what this movie is from its advertising and from like I love Jackie Chan in this movie. I feel like Jackie Chan brings a lot to this movie. I think he felt necessary. He felt like, okay, I understand why he's here. It doesn't feel forced.
Sure.
Ralph Macchio, take him out of this goddamn movie. I did not like him being in this movie. He was definitely one of the weaker parts. Maybe it's just because he was only in there for 5 minutes, but he is first of all, I heard this when I was listening to another podcast, so I'm going to steal it from them because it was an annoying thing. Ralph Macchio lives in California. This movie
Yeah.
takes place in New York.
Yeah.
Do you know how long that flight is?
It's yeah.
You are making you are literally bending space and time to have Ralph Macchio in this movie. That is how forced this feels. Like, I know
Yeah.
it's just stupid to say, but I'm bringing that up as like an example of how forced Ralph Macchio feels onto this movie. I think the best scene with Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan in this movie is when they're going back and forth on the best defense techniques with Lee. And you have that. I actually really laughed out loud. I felt like it was a really genuine comedic moment when they were teaching him and they kept yeeting him to the ground. And what I thought that was the only scene that I actually enjoyed watching Ralph Macchio in. And that's not to say anything against him as an act, like the
No.
actor or like the performance. I thought he did really well with his screen time that he had. I fault that on the writers for very, very clearly trying to get that nostalgia bait, that big name actor bait, and forcing him into the movie. You already had Jackie Chan. You just needed Jackie Chan because I felt like if you just had Jackie Chan and, like you said, had him already know Miyagi karate and what, like, why doesn't he know? He knew Miyagi. Like, why doesn't he know Miyagi? Like, it made no sense. It felt forced. I feel like
Sure.
that for me was definitely one of the weakest points
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you already had in my opinion, a really endearing, enjoyable story between Mia and Lee. And I I would say I actually loved the first, like the arc of the the subversion of expectations where Lee is actually the one who's training someone else. And instead of him actually being, you have that line of like, oh, you're not fighting. I promised my mom I wouldn't fight, like, but I'm the one
Yeah.
that's fighting. I actually really liked that, oh, maybe obviously I knew based on the advertisement we're gonna have to get to the big tournament. It's built up, but I really enjoyed that first part of the movie where you get a very endearing, like, he starts working at the pizza restaurant and he starts training for the SAT and he starts living a normal life and just goes about.
Sure.
I feel like a really good slice of life, enjoyable story for the first like half of this movie. And then I actually didn't hate that he lost the boxing match. I felt like that was like a, oh shit, what's going to happen moment. And I do
Sure.
like that that is the actual catalyst for why Lee goes and fights in the tournament, because I was originally afraid that it was going to be a, oh, I'm going to do this for the girl, because we have that scene at the fair where he like misrepresents the situation and
Yeah.
whatever, and it's going to be that whole thing. I actually really liked that they tied these two storylines together, even though I did not like the second storyline as much, of it being, no, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not doing this because I want to beat I think his name was Connor. Um I want to beat Connor and I want to get the girl. No, he's not doing it for that. He's doing it because the prize money will help his friend who he feels like he let down. And I think that's really endearing. I thought that was really emotional. That being said, having the whole training thing be a like, this is, I already said like they couldn't hold the scene for 2 seconds. This movie is also montage the movie. It felt like we were watching this like
Mo-
this
montage the
entire
movie.
movie is, yeah, this entire movie is really made up of montages. It is the training it is two training montages stuck together. It is the training montage for the boxing match and the training montage for the fight itself. And
It's it seems like a funny now that I think about it. It really seems like a fan made film was like the montage scene It was of Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan training Lee. And it's almost like,
Yeah.
it was like a fan-made film. They're like, oh, we can make a whole movie out of this. Let's get these guys on board. Get over here. It's almost
Yeah.
like they did that on purpose. But I wouldn't be as mad at this is wrapping up Ralph Macchio because I wanted to say this after you said it. I honestly would not be as mad. I still would be mad, but I wouldn't be as mad if they just didn't put him in a trailer or put him on a poster and had it be like a fun
Yeah.
cameo. That's the only difference. I don't market him in this movie if he really isn't going to be in it because there's no point for him to be in it. Just save it to be like a small surprise. It's like Bucky in Captain America 4. He comes in, he makes a fun little cameo, and he actually adds something to the story. He's got a little bit of, he gives a speech to Sam. It's fun. It's nice. In Karate Kid, it feels wrong because you marketed him in this movie.
I mean, he is front and center. One of the biggest things on the main Karate Kid poster is Ralph Macchio. I feel like he had more screen time in the trailer than he did in the movie almost. Like I think we got looking back, I think we got every single scene that Ralph Macchio is in, barring like maybe 2 in the trailers that he is actually in the movies.
Sure. And I do like this. I thought that Lee and Mia, I thought those two actors actually had pretty good chemistry. They had a really fun relationship. Like they were actually pretty good. I think that again the material they were given in the latter half of the movie, the second half, it just wasn't very good. And Mia is kind of pushed aside after that first half.
Yeah.
It's to the detriment of the movie. And then also, we didn't talk about this character yet, but the mom, I also feel like is very pushed aside in the entire thing.
Oh yeah.
And it's just kind of thrown in there. And I'm like, why? This isn't needed. And
I think if you would have taken the first half of this movie's storyline and stretched it out to be an hour-and-a-half movie, I felt like this might be the best Karate Kid movie, honestly. Like full stop. I feel like if you would have spent more time on the boxing storyline and saving the pizza restaurant and have that be this whole big thing with Lee being the sensei and learning to cope through the training and fighting in a more healthy manner and getting past that rage, I feel like that could have been a phenomenal story. And it was for what we got out of it. But then we had to have Ralph Macchio in this movie, and the only way to shoehorn him into this is to have him fight in the big tournament.
Well, don't make it a tournament. Here's what you should have done. And yeah, it would have been redundant because then it would have been solely about karate, it would have been about boxing. Have it be changed so that the guy loses the fight in the beginning like he does.
Mm-hmm.
And Lee doesn't go to fight in the tournament. He takes his place and he fights in the boxing match. And then he goes to Miyagi, he goes to Macchio. Or did I say Miyagi? Then he goes to Mr. Hun. Then he goes to Danny LaRusso. And then he gets trained and he's using karate within the boxing match. That's what you should have done. And yeah, it would have been generic as hell. It would have been the most generic story ever because we've seen it thousands of times, but it would have made a lot more sense. And the flow of the story would have flowed a lot nicer than, what we actually got.
That would have been generic, but like this entire second half of the plot line is the most generic plot line possible with him I feel like it would have been a more subversion of expectation to go. I feel like it would have been less generic to go with that plot line that you had just proposed because like, I don't know, like another character, and this is like kind of changing topics, but another character that I actually really I think this is going to be the one thing we agree on the most, and if we don't, I would be floored. The best character in this movie, other than like I really enjoyed Mia and Lee's chemistry, is Alan. I feel like Alan is very clearly made, like he serves his role that he is very clearly supposed to serve perfectly. I mean, the scene on the rooftop with him singing Backstreet Boys on the roof so poorly, and him just being the most ride or die friend. I want more scenes of Lee and Alan interacting with each other. Like, I love those. I loved Alan. I feel like he served his role like replace Ralph Macchio with Alan. Like screw Ralph Macchio. Like bring in more
Screw
Alan.
up, yeah.
No, like genuinely though, like why do we need these old farts to come into this movie when you have people like Alan and Mia and Lee who are, in my opinion, doing a really good job with what they're being given, and you're sidelining these characters. Like you said, Mia got sidelined in this movie for Ralph Macchio, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. You know, this I still don't think it would have been perfect, but I think if you drew it out more, it actually might flow a little more cohesively. It's almost like this was like a hidden. At first, I compared it to like having two scripts and then throwing it together. It also almost seems like they had like a season of Cobra Kai, like an idea for a season of Cobra Kai, and they never filmed it. And they're like, "Yeah, this is good enough. Let's just make a movie. Let's bring in Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio." That's almost
Yeah.
kind of like what it feels like here, because it also does like it feels a lot like a Cobra Kai plot with different characters, a different setting, and I just I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking with the plot for this movie sometimes. Again,
Yeah.
it's not the worst abominable plot ever. It just doesn't match with the first half doesn't match with the second half. And I don't understand why it has to be so convoluting of itself. Why can't you just
Yeah.
tell one story, tell the other? Or honestly, you know what? As much as I hate sequels, save another plot for a sequel.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I think one of the most upsetting parts of this movie is, hear me out, make this a two-part movie. Make 2 hour-and-a-half movies, end it on a cliffhanger, have the first movie and make an entire movie out of the training for the boxing match plot line and the pizza line and building up their relationship. Have that movie, and I know they would never do this in Hollywood because for some reason they're allergic to this type of storytelling and I hate it so much. But have the first movie be the boxing match and all that. Have it end on him losing, and then have the second movie, have an entire movie of Lee having to come back and train and fight in this tournament. Make two movies out of it because that's what it feels like. It feels like they wanted to make two movies out of this and were forced to make one.
Yeah.
I feel like if you would have let these stories breathe a lot more, fix the editing because God, the editing is atrocious. And you would have had two. Would they have been masterpieces? No, but you would have had a way better two movies. Each one of those movies, if you would have done it right with the same plot line, would have been. And you could even bring in Ralph Macchio and have him be a bigger character and make it feel less like a forced cameo if you would have done that. Now, again, I know Hollywood is stupid. Hollywood doesn't make good decisions most of the time. They're never going to listen to us. They're never going to do something like that because it doesn't make financial sense. It doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for the actors' filming schedules, probably. But if you would have done that, I would have loved to see how that would have played out. And I guess that is
Yeah.
one of the things I'm the most upset about is that I don't think this movie is going. In fact, I don't know about you. My theater was like barely half full. And now, granted, I went on a Thursday night and it's technically opening weekend starts Friday, whatever. Or no, I did go on Friday. Never mind. So I went on the opening Friday night. In this movie, it was like barely it was like half full. This movie is not going to perform well enough to get a sequel, which to me is upsetting because I feel like if you fixed the editing and you fixed the pacing problems and told one cohesive story, these actors could have killed it and made a really good movie. And to
Well,
me,
and
that's the most upsetting part of this.
again, I don't think we needed it. But if you were gonna do a sequel and you were gonna make it two parts, do it in like an Avengers Endgame style thing for the Karate Kid universe. And what I mean by that is have Mr. Hun fail. Like somehow incorporate him into the boxing story again. Have him train Lee and as Lee's training. I forget what's his name.
Let me pull it up. I have the cast pulled up on a different
That's
screen.
also the problem with this film is I barely remember any of the characters' names because some of them were just forgettable. But have Mr. Hun train Lee as he's training the boxer. Victor as he's training Victor. And, if Lee fails, it's also as Mr. Han failing. The second movie is all about him bringing in Ralph Macchio because, hey, I failed the first time. I need that Miyagi wisdom and I need help. Come in and help me. And then it's this big Avengers Endgame style movie because now you're combining both universes. What was originally a reboot of the Karate Kid movies is now within the Karate Kid universe.
Yeah.
For all I care, bring in Jaden Smith. Bring in Jaden Smith into the movie for all I care. Have him make an appearance in a cameo. Why
Please
not?
Don't.
No,
please don't.
That was one thing I was like, oh, thank God they didn't do that. I'm so happy they didn't.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how Cobra Kai ended. Cobra Kai, I think, was like the Avengers Endgame style of ending, from what I understand. My parents watched it and they really enjoyed it. I just never had an interest in it. But from what I understand, it ended, pretty emotionally. It ended the way that, what would be like a big finale to a big Karate Kid universe. So I'm going based off of the fact that I don't know if it was or not.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a movie like this, do it.
Yeah. Can I go on a very, very, very unrelated side tangent really quickly? Because I realized something while we were talking about this that's so off topic, but also kind of is on topic.
Please do.
So Mia is played by Sadie Stanley.
Yes.
And Lee is played by Ben Wang, or Ben Wang,
Yes.
however you pronounce his name.
Sure.
They're supposed to be playing high schoolers who are preparing for the SATs and getting ready for college. So granted, they're on the older end. Sadie is 23 years old. Ben Wang is 25 years old. I realized something when thinking about that. This weekend, obviously, we talked about it was Memorial Day. I was walking around with my family, and there was a lot of high school groups walking around, like actual high school students. And I was looking around and I was like, you look like you're 5. Like, you look like a child, yet you're very clearly in high school. Like, when I'm seeing real life high schoolers, they feel so young. I realized why. And that's because you have in all of media, every single piece of media is when high schoolers are on screen, whether it's TV, movie, whatever, they're played by people our age or older. I don't look like a high schooler. I don't think I do, at least. I look like a college student or older. I mean, I look like a college student. I'm pretty young. But, like, I'm not saying anything against the actors. I wanted to go off on the side tangent because I realized in that moment, this is why I view real life high schoolers as being, like, I view them as, like, middle schoolers or children. And that's because they are. But our perception of a high schooler built off of media and movies is 25, 26-year-old.
Sure. Look, the only piece of media that I've ever seen that actually did a good job about casting like looks and age and kind of appropriate, genuinely, and it wasn't really until season 4. Season 4 kind of changed it because everybody's older now. But Stranger Things. Stranger Things actually did a really good job of like casting kids like look the age and look the part. I mean, it's now that's been almost 10 years since that first season, but they're technically still in high school. I think they are either seniors or whatnot.
I never watched the last season, so I don't know, but yeah.
I'm trying to remember if they were or not, but
I think they were still in high school. I think they were leaving high school because I watched like the first episode and then dropped it.
Well, they were playing D&D in high school, so I knew that at least the 4 main guys are in high school. And 11's in high school. I know obviously the older kids who were in high school are obviously graduated. They have full-time jobs. That actually makes more sense. I'm fine with that. But that's defeating the point. I'm getting off track whenever I'm talking about this. I'm just saying that that's the only show I've ever seen where I'm like, they've actually casted age appropriate. That makes sense.
I would say the only other one that I can think of off the top of my head, and maybe that's just because it's fresh, and I realized this should have been our cold open, is because they announced the 3 main actors for the Harry Potter TV series on HBO.
Potter, I forgot about that. Yeah.
That I think is exceptional casting. I'm pretty not excited for it, admittedly, as a huge Harry Potter fan. I've read the books like 4 times. I love the movies. I'm not looking forward to this just because I'm afraid that they're going to screw it up, but I'm very intrigued. I think that the casting has actually made me really excited for it, and they're played by children. And in the original Harry Potter movie, I feel like that is another thing. It was exceptionally cast, first of all, but also the ages throughout the movies, I think made perfect sense. And I think if they do the TV show right, it will also make perfect sense. In
Sure,
this movie, and wrapping it all back, because we've gone on a huge side tangent, wrapping it all back, in this movie, you're watching a 25 and 23-year-old talk about the SATs. You're
sure,
16 when you're supposed to be talking about SATs, maybe 17, 18 if you're on the older end of things.
sure.
And I don't know. I'm not saying any. I think Lee or Ben Wong and Sadie Stanley are phenomenal in this movie. I think they genuinely did a really good job with what they had. I'm not dogging on the actors whatsoever. I'm just saying this trend of having like people our age or older playing high schoolers is, I don't understand it. And okay, I guess maybe it's because of a legal thing, because of working with child actors and things like that, but still, like, I
It's a
don't
little
know.
bit that. It's a lot of it that. But even like, okay, when Pirates of the Caribbean, the original Black Pearl movie came, Karen Knightley, I'm pretty sure, had just turned 17 years old. Like her mom had to be on set with her because
Yeah.
they like she was not allowed to do a lot of the things without like parent consent.
Hmm.
Okay, then have parents be on set. But you're not paying the mom to be there.
Yeah.
At least I'm pretty sure you're not paying the mom to be there. So like she just has to be there for consent for the child. Okay, that's fine.
Well,
Then
and I
do
guess
that.
the other logic is, unless you're filming this over the summer, you're also pulling them out of school. Like uh, the actors like Sadie Stanley and Ben, like they're either in college or even out of college or like whatever, so you don't have
Sure.
to worry about like a school or affecting their social like as much as you would with a child actor. I'm just saying, I realized when thinking about this that that's the reason why my perception on an actual high schooler is so warped, because I'll see someone who is truly a high schooler, a 16, 15, 17-year old, and be like, you look like a literal child, like you look like you're 5. And then I sit in this movie and I'm like, see, that's what I think a high schooler should look like. Like you look a lot older. And then like I look it up afterwards, because when I was watching this movie, I was like, how old is the actress playing Mia? And I looked it up this morning after the movie, and I was like, she's 23. She is a year old, not to age my, she's a year older than I am.
Look, again, I don't know fully what the thing behind it is for why they cast older. Maybe it's more the emotional maturity of it. Look, you went through high school, so you understand what being a high schooler is like, so you can play
Yeah.
off of it better. Maybe, but also, why not just cast a high schooler then? Because they're also going through high school. Look again. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It doesn't bother me that much. The only time it's ever bothered me was when they did the live action, when they did the movie version of Dear Evan Hansen, and they cast Ben Platt in the role of Evan
And
Hansen
they,
or of
wasn't he like 30 something when they did that?
32, and he's supposed to be playing I think it's a sophomore in high school.
So like 14, 15.
Funny enough, Caitlin Dever's also in that movie. Funny enough, she's also in that movie, conveniently, as we talked about Last of Us and whatnot. But that's the only time I've ever looked at it and gone, that was awkward. Why are you in this movie? Please don't be in this movie. Give it to literally give it to Jordan Fisher for all I care. He would look a lot better as a high schooler than you do, and even he's still older for it. He shouldn't be doing it. It's just I don't know. It's a weird thing in Hollywood. And I'm not saying I'm against it or for it because I don't really have an argument in it. I don't care. But it can be distracting when it's done like very incorrectly. And so I understand your like mini rant about that.
Yeah, I know it's a very big side tangent, and I'll wrap it up with my thoughts. This is probably gonna be the shortest episode of the Nimrods podcast, which doesn't shock me because it's the least we've had to talk about other than last week. But we were also much more engaged with the. I mean, to be fair, the I called it Last of Us so many times. The Last of Us
You
final
did.
yeah, I know. I realized afterwards, and when I listened back when I was editing, I realized. But the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning was basically double this movie's length. So obviously we're going to have more to talk about. And next week is going to be Ballerina. It's going to be our Ballerina review, which I'm really excited for.
5 hours long. It's gonna be a 5 hour long review.
Yeah. I don't know what else we're going to talk about. We need to talk. Me and Carson are going to have a conversation offline because we no longer have Andor and we no longer have Last of Us now as of this week.
Yeah,
So there's a
until
little bit of a gap before Ironheart it starts. I don't think Phineas and Ferb will have started yet. So we'll come back next episode and figure out, other than Ballerina, what we talk about. But yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I guess wrapping my thoughts together on this movie. I know I already kind of said in the beginning, if you're a Karate Kid fan, you're gonna enjoy it. I can't say anything bad as far as like if you're a fan and you enjoy it, whatever. I just think that this movie was done so poorly. I think they tried to put thought into it, and then there just wasn't any thought put into it. I think that it is a mess from start to finish in a bad way, not like Last of Us. I think it is a actual mess. I think it sells people on the wrong thing. They buy their ticket, they go watch it, and it's just a big convoluted mess. And I almost expected better from a franchise that created Cobra Kai, which is very popular and a lot of people really love.
Yeah, and to wrap my thoughts up on it as well, excuse me, I I I really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I expected, and maybe that's the reason why I'm so much higher on this movie. It's just because I went in dreading watching this movie, admittedly. However, I fully admit that it is very flawed. I would say if I had to give this movie a rating, it would be a 7 to a 7.5 on it. Like genuinely, like from my enjoyment perspective, from a movie making perspective, it's like a 2. Like the editing is atrocious, the pacing is pretty bad. The acting is what holds this movie together more than anything else. Mainly, again, back with Sadie Stanley and Ben Wong, and how they hold this movie together for me. I think that you had too much going on. I think trying to tie in the previous Miyagi movies, like whatever, you did not need that. It was unnecessary. I think that you should have told this story because you had a really good one, for the most part, in my
Yeah,
opinion, that you just butchered because you're Hollywood. I feel like this movie for me is a prime example of how, especially recent Hollywood, has been butchering movies that had
sure,
so much potential.
sure.
And yeah, like that's just like genuinely kind of my thoughts. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I will never watch this movie again unless I go with a friend or something like that. And I don't even think my friends are going to be interested in seeing it just because it's not going to be well rated and it's going to not get a sequel because it's not going to be well rated.
Yeah, yeah. No, I for the most part agree with you. I would probably give it a 5 out of 10. It's about 50-50. Just like the plot, it's 50-50.
Yeah.
So, um, well, that being said, any final remarks, Brandon? Anything you wanna touch on? Anything you want to say? Ballerina next week. We're very
Um.
excited for that.
Yeah. Yeah, as I already mentioned, we're gonna try to figure out what next week's gonna be other than Ballerina. I know we are getting rid of the "What are you looking forward to" section, but I want to shout out something really quickly. Just I had not really thought about the movie Elio at all until like basically at all, other than like the few posters I've seen in theaters.
Sure.
I'm actually kind of excited for that movie. I saw one trailer. It's the first trailer I'd ever seen in a lead up to this movie. I think that the Disney Pixar, I can't remember if this is Disney or Pixar. I think it's Pixar. I've not seen most of, I think the last Pixar movie that I watched was Onward, and I actually really enjoyed that as a D&D fan. But I feel like a lot of their movies recently have been so let down. They've been so like badly rated. I'm actually kind of excited for Elio in a way that I didn't expect to
It,
be, just based off like the trailer that I watched. I don't know if you watched, because I'd assume that the
I did.
commercials are the same for every single movie. I don't know what your thoughts
I did.
are on, and we don't have to spend too much time on this, obviously, but I just wanted to give
No.
that a little shout out because, like, I don't know if it's going to be an entire podcast episode if we're going to turn it into a short, but like I want to watch this movie and review it on this channel because it looks kind of enjoyable.
I think it looks like classic Disney, or like classic Pixar Disney specifically. Like it seems like they have an original idea that actually, you know, is interested in telling its story, is interested in like just having a fun grand time and not really, you know, pushing this deeper meaning. You know?
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I actually really enjoyed Inside Out 2 was because it told a really nice story, but actually had like a really fun message behind it. They earned that message because the story itself was really fun and really engaging.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of Pixar movies recently have tried to push messages, but the story hasn't earned it. It never got to the moment that you're like, oh, yep, I feel pushed by this message. I feel like it's earned, and that's the issue. I did see the trailer. The best way to say it is it feels like classic Disney Pixar. Which I'm kind of, you know, excited to see that again.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm watching a lot of romance anime right now. I'm just going to say that. Our best performing TikTok is when Carson Carson was not feeling well because he was sick, so he couldn't post a TikTok. It was like 2 weeks ago on Thursday, which is supposed to be his days, and I made up for him. And I talked about a random romance anime that I've been watching that I didn't even think people were going to care about, and it is now our best performing TikTok, like pretty much by far. And so it just got me in the romance mood. It just motivated me. I'm probably going to post another romance anime review after I finish the one I'm currently watching, which isn't as good, but still enjoyable. But like, dude, I've been in such a romance anime kick. Like, I love love. Terry loves love.
Yeah, Terry loves love.
But yeah.
I'm excited to rewatch the John Wick films for Ballerina this week.
Are you going to?
I'm going to. I like all those movies. I think they're all really good. I think they're all really fun.
I'll probably rewatch my favorites, which is 1 and 4. I think are my favorites of the John Wick movies. I think they're all really good. I think we'll talk about this next week probably, but I think the John Wick franchise is one of the best. Like I think that the John Wick franchise is better than the Mission Impossible franchise in terms of consistency. Mission Impossible might have some better highs, but I also think it has a lot lower lows than the John Wick movies. And again, we'll talk about that next week, but since you brought it up.
No, yeah. But I'm excited to rewatch those this week. I always have a good time watching those. Oh boy. Well, let's wrap this sucker up. Let's put a pretty bow on it. Let's get it out. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast. Our 13th episode, big episode. We're getting up there. You can find us everywhere on all streaming platforms such as Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, more, etc. You can find us literally everywhere. You can find us on all social media platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. You can follow us at Nerdy Nimrods. And with that being said, we have been the Nerdy Nimrods, the two Nimrods that are nerdy. I'm trying to do something different with the outro now too, and I'm just doing it to piss you off. Anyway, with that being said, stay nerdy.